Some tractors are so massive, bizarre, or outright extreme, it is hard to believe they were ever built. Yet every machine on this list actually exists, and most people will never see them in action. From a single steam giant pulling 50 plows, to Soviet icons that saved entire communities from mud, these machines rewrite what you think is possible in the world of farming. What drives engineers and farmers to build tractors this insane, and which one stands above the rest? Let us count down the most unbelievable real machines ever to thunder across a field. At sunrise in the Australian outback, engines rumble and red dust swirls as more than 100 vintage Farmall tractors line up for the world's largest parade of its kind. The Inverell Showground becomes a moving sea of red and white, as 110 machines, some nearly a century old, crawl across the field in perfect formation. For farmers and collectors, this is not just a display of horsepower, it is a celebration of heritage, each tractor telling a story of generations who worked the land. Organizers spend months planning every detail, from sourcing rare models to coordinating the convoy's slow roll. Guinness World Records confirms the feat: 110 Farmalls in a single parade, a number that echoes through the crowd and cements Inverell's place in tractor history. But scale is not always about numbers. In North Dakota, one man sets out to resurrect a legend lost to time. Corey Anderson, a builder with a passion for steam, spends 15,000 hours recreating the Case 150, a steam tractor first built in 1905 and long since vanished from the earth. The result is a 37.5-ton giant standing 14 feet tall, with wheels taller than most people. When Anderson fires up the boiler, steam pours from the stack and the ground shakes. The Case 150 hauls 50 plows behind it, more than 80,000 pounds of steel scraping the prairie, proving that a single machine can do the work of an entire fleet. Guinness recognizes it as the world's largest operating steam tractor, a title earned not in a museum, but in the dirt, where it pulls like nothing is behind it. In that moment, the line between history and spectacle disappears. The crowd falls silent, watching a lost era thunder back to life, one revolution at a time. In the 1970s, the race for raw power began to reshape the American heartland. Fields grew larger, soils tougher, and farmers demanded more muscle than ever before. Two rival visions emerged, one built for brute force, the other for compact, relentless efficiency. On the northern plains, the Steiger design team pushed the limits of what a four-wheel drive tractor could do. Their answer was the Tiger III ST470, a green and white monster that delivered 470 horsepower straight to the dirt. Articulated steering let this giant snake through rutted fields, while its massive frame kept all four wheels gripping the earth. At nearly 80,000 pounds, the ST470 was no showpiece. It was built to rip through the heaviest soils, pulling implements that would cripple lesser machines. For farmers facing endless acres of tough ground, the Tiger III was not just an option. It was a revolution in how fields got broken. Meanwhile, John Deere engineers in Iowa were chasing a different kind of power. Their 8640 model, released in 1977, packed high horsepower into a more compact, affordable package. Weighing in at 28,000 pounds, the 8640 brought four-wheel drive muscle to thousands of mid-sized farms that had never seen anything like it. Its $77,000 price tag turned heads, but so did its ability to slog through mud and dust without skipping a beat. For many, the 8640 was the first taste of big tractor performance without the big tractor footprint. Both machines answered the same call: more power, more productivity, less compromise. Whether it was the massive articulated Steiger or the dense, determined John Deere, The 1970s set the stage for a new era of farming, where engineering was not just about size, but about solving the toughest problems the land could throw back. In the frozen wilds of Siberia, where spring means knee-deep mud and winter locks the land under ice, the Kirovets K700 earned its reputation the hard way. Built by the Kirov plant in Leningrad, starting in 1962, this 15-ton articulated brute was not designed for comfort or looks. It was built to survive. Under the hood, a 10.5-liter V12 diesel engine delivers 300 horsepower, enough to drag plows through peat bogs, haul timber out of marshes, or pull trucks stranded axle deep in muck. Operators in the north call it the Marsh Monster for a reason. The K700's wide tires and massive frame let it claw through ground that would swallow other machines whole. In the 1970s, footage spread of these tractors muscling through mud, chains clanking, exhaust stacks belching, as they rescued stuck vehicles or tugged heavy loads across terrain that barely qualified as land. For Soviet farmers, it was a lifeline. One machine that could break frozen soil in spring, then drag out a harvest before the first snow. Even logging crews and emergency responders relied on it, using the K700 to clear debris after disasters or haul supplies across the tundra. There is no glamour in the cab, just steel levers, battered seats, and the constant vibration of raw power. But for the men who drove them, the Kirovets was more than a tool. It was proof that with enough muscle and grit, you could tame land that seemed untouchable. In places where the ground itself fights back, the K700 never blinked. Its legacy lives on in the stories of those who watched it work, day after day, year after year, no matter how rough the season turned. In the far north, where winter never truly loosens its grip, survival depends on machines that never quit. The DT-75 Polar variant was born out of necessity, built to keep Soviet missile bases running, even as temperatures plunged below what most engines could tolerate. Standard tractors froze solid at -40, but the DT-75's insulated cab, heated fuel lines, and thickened oils let it grind forward through snowdrifts and black ice. Operators wrapped in layers of wool and fur would climb inside before dawn, coaxing diesel to life in air so cold it would shatter glass. Every component was chosen for resilience: rubber that stayed flexible, steel that did not crack, windows that fogged but never iced over. In places where the sun barely rises, these machines became lifelines, hauling sleds packed with supplies across endless white, or carving roads through permafrost so remote that maps left them blank. Crews rotated in shifts, knowing that a stalled engine could mean frostbite or worse. The DT-75's reputation spread by word of mouth. If it could run in Siberia, it could run anywhere. Thousands of miles away, on the steep hillsides of northern Italy, another kind of danger lurked. Vineyards cling to slopes so sharp that a single misstep can send a tractor tumbling into the valley below. Enter the Antonio Carraro Spider ILD-02, a machine designed to master gravity itself. Instead of a driver strapped into a seat, the Spider is guided by remote control, letting operators stand at a safe distance while the machine creeps along grades that would flip a standard tractor in seconds. Its low-slung frame and wide stance keep the center of gravity close to the earth, while sensors and software maintain balance on terrain that looks more like a ski run than a farm. On mornings slick with dew, or after sudden rain, the Spider crawls among the vines, pruning or spraying where no human dare ride. Accidents that once left families shattered have become rare, replaced by a quiet confidence as the machine does its work. For vineyard crews, safety is no longer a gamble. The risk of rollover is managed by engineering, not luck. In both the frozen Arctic and the sunlit slopes of Europe, these tractors show what happens when survival is not just about brute force, but about outsmarting the land itself. Austrian engineers at Steyr took on a challenge few dared: how to build a tractor that could farm the steepest hills in Europe without tipping over. The answer arrived in the form of the Steyr 8300 Terrace, a machine whose entire design revolves around balance. Its chassis hugs the earth, with the engine and transmission set low between the axles. On slopes that reach 45 degrees, where a misstep could send a machine tumbling, the Terrace keeps its center of gravity so close to the ground that it clings to the hillside like a mountain goat. During a notorious test on a local slope called Suicide Hill, the Terrace crawled up muddy inclines where even experienced drivers hesitated to walk. Sensors in each wheel constantly adjust traction, shifting power to whichever tire finds grip first. For hillside vineyards and alpine pastures, this is not just a tractor, it is a lifeline. Across the border in Germany, Claas engineers set their sights on a different problem: fields that stretch for miles, but crops that stand taller than a person. The Claas Xerion does not just rise above the competition, it literally towers over it. Its modular frame allows operators to raise or lower the chassis depending on the job. When harvesting corn or sunflowers, the Xerion's tall stance lets it glide above dense rows without crushing delicate plants below. Swapping out attachments is as simple as clicking in a new tool: high-clearance sprayers, massive grain carts, or even snowblowers for winter work. At over 50,000 pounds, and with more than 500 horsepower under the hood, the Xerion is both a giant and a gymnast, able to twist, pivot, and adapt to any task thrown its way. What ties these machines together is not just brute strength, but a kind of design finesse. Steyr and Claas teams obsess over every detail, from hydraulic leveling systems to modular axles, so that their tractors can master the unpredictable landscapes of Europe. Whether it is the razor-thin margin between safety and disaster on a hillside, or the need to float above crops without leaving a trace, these tractors prove that sometimes the most extreme engineering is about elegance, not excess. In the humid fields of Brazil, where sugarcane grows in towering green walls, ordinary tractors do not stand a chance. The challenge is not just the heat or the mud, it is the height. Sugarcane can reach over 3 meters tall, forming dense rows that swallow up anything too low or too wide. Massey Ferguson engineers, working alongside Brazilian cane growers, set out to solve a problem that most farmers never face: how to work above the crop without crushing it below. Their answer is a high-clearance specialist, a machine that seems to float a full meter above the sea of cane. This Massey Ferguson variant does not just ride higher, it is built around the crop itself. Raised axles lift the chassis well above the row tops, while a narrow, elongated frame threads the machine between stalks without snapping a single plant. The wheels are set far apart, straddling the rows like stilts, and the cab sits up high, giving operators a clear view over the green canopy. Instead of brute force, this design is all about finesse, delivering fertilizer, spraying, or harvesting in fields where every inch of clearance counts. Farmers in the tropics call this the cane cruiser. In the busiest months, it glides above the crop from sunrise to sunset, covering dozens of hectares a day without leaving a trace in its wake. The high stance means it can work even when the cane is nearly ready for harvest, reaching places that would stop a standard tractor cold. For growers, the payoff is huge: less crop damage, higher yields, and a machine that turns a tangled jungle into a neatly managed farm. The partnership between Massey Ferguson's design team and Brazil's cane experts did not just produce a new tractor, it set a new standard for crop-specific engineering. Where most machines are built for the broad, flat fields of grain country, the Cane Cruiser proves that sometimes the most extreme tractors are the ones designed to disappear into the crop, doing their work quietly, a meter above the chaos. In the world of tropical farming, height is not just a number, it is the difference between profit and loss, between a clean harvest and a field flattened before the season ends. Inside the cab of a Fendt 1000 Vario, farming looks more like piloting a jet than driving a tractor. Operators settle into a seat that is more ergonomic lounge than workbench, surrounded by screens that track every detail: engine load, GPS routes, even real-time soil data. The multi-screen dashboard lets a single person command 517 horsepower with the touch of a finger, adjusting settings on the fly without ever glancing away from the field. Fendt engineers did not just chase raw power, they built an environment where long days feel shorter and fatigue does not win. Automatic climate control, active suspension, and noise-dampening glass turn the cab into a quiet bubble, even as 14 tons of steel and rubber thunder across the earth. New Holland's T9 series takes a different approach to the same challenge. Here, the focus is on sustainable strength, factory torque ratings engineered for relentless pulling, day after day. The T9 engine management system delivers peak power at low engine speed, meaning it can keep heavy implements moving without burning through fuel or wearing out the operator. Automation plays a key role, from headland turns to implement lift. Much of the grunt work is handled by software, letting operators focus on the bigger picture. The cab is designed for clarity and comfort, with wide glass panels and intuitive controls that respond instantly, even with gloved hands. Both Fendt and New Holland understand that comfort is not a luxury, it is a necessity when the work never stops. Farmers spend 12, sometimes 16 hours a day in these machines. Every detail, from the angle of the armrest to the placement of the throttle, is tested and retested by real operators. The result is a new kind of power, not just in the engine, but in the way the machine and the person inside work as one. These tractors prove that the most extreme machines are not just built to conquer the land, they are built to keep the people at the controls sharp, safe, and ready for whatever the season brings. When fields turn soft and heavy wheels start to sink, tracks become the secret weapon. Two engineering teams, separated by thousands of miles but driven by the same problem, reimagined what a tractor could be. In Fargo, North Dakota, Case IH engineers rolled out the Quad-Track, with 4 independent rubber tracks replacing traditional wheels. Each track pivots and flexes, keeping constant contact with the ground, even when ruts and ridges threaten to swallow lesser machines. The result is that ground pressure drops below 15 pounds per square inch, less than a farmer's boot. That means a Quad-Track can glide across freshly tilled soil without leaving deep scars, protecting the earth for the next season. Meanwhile, John Deere's design lab in Iowa focused on maximizing grip and minimizing compaction. Their answer was the 9RX, a massive 4-track tractor with a continuous footprint that stretches the length of a pickup truck. By spreading weight across 4 wide belts, the 9RX keeps its more than 600 horsepower grounded, even in the stickiest, wettest fields. Engineers obsessed over every inch, including track tension, frame articulation, and the angle of drive wheels, to ensure that power translates into forward motion, not wasted spin. For agronomists, the impact is clear. When a 20-ton tractor can float over sandy or saturated ground, root systems stay healthy and yields climb. Operators notice the difference too. Instead of wrestling a machine out of mud, they steer with confidence, watching as tracks bite into the earth and pull heavy implements with ease. In regions where a single rainstorm can shut down planting for days, these machines keep the work moving. Track technology didn't just solve a problem, it unlocked new possibilities. Larger implements, longer working days, and fewer ruts mean more acres covered in less time. What started as a fix for soft ground has become the standard for anyone chasing high efficiency. The engineers behind these machines saw not just a challenge, but a chance to rethink how power meets the land. Today, whether it is a Case IH Quadtrac or a John Deere 9RX, tracks have changed the rules of farming, one revolution at a time. In a nondescript metal shop on the Montana plains, the Big Bud crew set their sights on a new kind of monster. The fields were getting bigger, the implements heavier, and farmers wanted more than any catalog could offer. The answer came in the form of the Big Bud 95050, a custom-built behemoth that pushed the limits of what a tractor could be. Its heart was a Detroit diesel engine tuned for nearly 1,000 horsepower, a number that seemed almost absurd for a farm machine in the early 1980s. But for the men in the Big Bud shop, absurdity was the point. This was not a factory run. It was a one-off order for a grower facing stubborn, compacted soil that laughed at lesser machines. The 95050's frame stretched longer and wider than anything else on the lot. Dual tires the size of hot tubs, axles borrowed from mining equipment, and a transmission built to handle the kind of torque that could snap steel. Every weld, every bolt was oversized, designed to survive endless hours pulling deep tillage rigs across land that had never known a break. Operators climbed a ladder just to reach the cab, which sat high above the ground like a control tower. From there, they could see the full sweep of the implement trailing behind, sometimes a chisel plow stretching 60 feet, sometimes a cultivator that seemed to need its own zip code. The Detroit engine's roar carried for miles, a deep-throated growl that announced when the 95050 was at work. In the right hands, it could turn over more acres in a day than most tractors managed in a week. What set the 95050 apart was not just its brute strength, but the culture that built it. Big Bud's engineers worked side by side with farmers, tweaking every detail until the machine fit the land and the job perfectly. No two builds were exactly alike. Each one was a handshake between the shop and the soil, a promise that no field was too tough, no job too big. The 95050 stood as proof that when the standard was not enough, you could always build bigger. And in the world of custom giants, that mindset would soon lead to something even more unbelievable. Steel, grease, and grit, some tractors are not just built for power, but for survival. On the Canadian prairies, versatile engineers knew their machines would face more than just dirt. Heavy axles, double-thick frames, and oversized bearings became standard for the 1150 prototype, a plowing match bruiser that could take a beating and keep going. The gearbox alone weighed as much as a compact car, designed to shrug off the shock loads that came with dragging steel through rock-studded ground. Factory mechanics could swap out a transmission or rebuild a rear end in hours, thanks to modular layouts and quick access panels. Every bolt was sized for hands numb from cold, every grease fitting placed where a work boot could reach. In the American Midwest, Challenger's industrial roots ran just as deep. Borrowing from mining equipment, their MT900 series used reinforced chassis rails and planetary axles that could support twice the weight of a standard farm tractor. These were not just upgrades, they were lessons learned from years of breakdowns in the field. When a 20-ton implement hit a hidden boulder, the frame flexed instead of fracturing. Operators told stories of finishing the season with nothing more than a dented panel or a sheared pin, while lesser machines sat in the weeds waiting for parts. Durability was not just about brute strength. It was about designing for the long haul, servicing that could be done in a barn, not a factory. Parts that lasted for decades, not just a single harvest. Mechanics became the unsung heroes, keeping these beasts in motion with oil-stained hands and a sixth sense for when a bearing was about to fail. The result? Tractors that outlasted trends, outworked expectations, and set the standard for toughness long before anyone started chasing horsepower records. Before the world's biggest tractors could claim their place in history, they had to prove they could survive it. Every so often, the drive to push boundaries takes center stage, not with a single machine, but with a coordinated force. In the heart of Brazil, a team of operators and mechanics set out to break new ground, literally and figuratively, by orchestrating a 24-hour cultivation marathon. Their goal was to see how much land could be turned in a single day using modern high-horsepower tractors working as one. The logistics alone bordered on the impossible. Dozens of drivers rotating in shifts, fuel trucks weaving between machines, mechanics on standby for tire changes and quick repairs. At dawn, a fleet of articulated giants rolled into position, each pulling massive 14-meter disc harrows. The engines roared to life, and the synchronized ballet began. Hour after hour, the convoy pressed forward, headlights slicing through dust clouds as the sun dipped and rose again. Operators swapped out at scheduled intervals, some grabbing coffee and a few minutes of sleep before climbing back into the cab. The pace never slackened. By the time the final pass was made, the team had cultivated 1,591 acres, an achievement that stood as a testament to planning, endurance, and the relentless pursuit of records. This was not just about horsepower or brute force. It was about coordination. Every tractor, every implement, every crew member working in perfect harmony. The numbers are staggering. Over 600 hectares in a single day, soil turned at a rate that would have been unthinkable a generation earlier. For the organizers, the record was not just a number on a certificate. It was proof that with the right people and the right machines, even the biggest goals are within reach. As the dust settled and the last tractor idled down, the crew knew they had done more than set a record. They had shown what is possible when ambition meets organization on a truly grand scale. Across the flat expanse of Montana wheat country, a single machine stands above all others, a true colossus in the world of farming. The Big Bud 16V747 is not just the world's largest tractor by title. It is a rolling monument to what happens when engineers and farmers refuse to accept limits. Built in 1977 by a small team at Northern Manufacturing in Havre, Montana, the 16V747 was commissioned for the Rossi brothers, California cotton growers who needed to tame fields that stretched beyond the horizon. At first glance, the numbers defy belief. It is 14 feet tall, it weighs 130,000 pounds, and it stretches nearly 30 feet from grill to hitch. The scale is staggering. Its heart is a Detroit diesel V16 engine, originally rated at 760 horsepower, but later tuned far beyond that. The fuel tank alone holds 1,000 gallons, enough to keep the monster running all day as it drags an 80-foot wide ripper through the soil. That is the kind of implement that would bring lesser machines to a halt. But for Big Bud, it is just another day's work. The sheer scale of the tractor is matched only by its presence in the field. Tires taller than a grown man, custom built to carry the weight, bite into the earth with every revolution. From the cab, the operator sits high above the dust and crop, commanding a view that stretches for miles. On a good day, the 16V747 can work through 800 acres before the sun sets, turning the impossible into routine. For decades, the Big Bud was more than a tool. It was a legend in motion, moving from farm to farm and even embarking on a 1,400-mile road trip that drew crowds at every stop. Today, the Williams family keeps the giant alive, maintaining it in working order and occasionally letting it loose on the plains. No other tractor has inspired so many stories or so many double takes from those who see it up close. In a world where machines keep getting smarter, the Big Bud 16V 747 remains the ultimate testament to raw, unapologetic scale, the king of all tractors, still ruling the fields it was built to conquer. Right now, global food demand is projected to rise by 50% by 2050, pushing engineering to its limits. Each extreme tractor isn't just a spectacle, it is a blueprint for how we feed billions on a changing planet. Innovation in the field today decides who eats tomorrow, so which machine will rewrite the next chapter? Thanks for watching. Share your wildest tractor story in the comments below.